Hey, how's everybody doing? This is the Honest Craft Beer Reviews overtake or examination, or however you want to say it, our little group review on the barley wine style beers. And this evening we have a special guest with us, but we have our little same people that I'd like to call our wonderful admins for the group. Go ahead and we'll start off with Tom. Go ahead and introduce your guys' self and your beers, and we'll sure get started on an overlook of the style.
All right, well, I'm Tom the Beer Whisperer. Today I've been trying to stay through all these style examinations or style reviews, something more or less local for me. I've got the Schlafly barley wine out of St. Louis, Missouri. It's actually St. Louis Brewery, but they're Schlafly. It's an ale aged on oak. It's 10.2%, 40 IBUs. And that's the bottle. Here's how it looks in the glass. If you can see that, kind of a deep copper pours a nice, dense tan head. I'll pass it to Dale.
All right, Dale. I'm based out of Colorado. Today I've got the Lionheart barley wine from Dads and Dudes Breweria in Aurora, Colorado. They make great pizza there too. This thing chimes in at a whopping 13%.
Wow, that's
it's a big one. So,
Dale means business.
There it is in the glass. So, get the typical stuff. So there we go. Next.
Go ahead, Tony.
I'm Tony. I'm out of Iowa. I've got the, you can see it, Central Waters. It's a barrel aged. It's 11.5%. That's what it looks like in the glass. Pretty dark. Looks like the other ones. Is out of Wisconsin.
Excellent. Very nice. Lovely. And as your host this evening, I am Scott White. I come in chiming into you from Ohio. I am Beer Geek Beer Reviews. You can find me up on both YouTube and now on beergeekbeerreviews.com. I'm chiming in with the Avery Brewing Company's, I have not had this yet, Hog Heaven. This is from Boulder, Colorado. Very nice. It comes in at a whopping 9.2% alcohol by volume and 104 IBUs.
Wow, that's a lot of IBUs on a barley wine.
Very, very lovely sounding. I have not had it yet, like I exclaimed. But let's take an overlook as you guys, sample your beers or whatnot and take an overview. I only know certain amounts from what I've seen and from what I know about barley wines, but I'd like to get a collaboration on everything that everybody knows. And to start it off, I do know that barley wine is almost like a collaboration of styles throughout history, because it links all the way back to ancient Greece, from what I've been reading. And they wanted more like a beer barley wine, or a beer that kind of like amped up to wine qualities, very malty, very heavy, but at the same time big in alcohol. And I've been searching and searching and searching, and I cannot disclaim who was the absolute first to come across and say, okay, well, this is the definitive first barley wine. Like I said, I mean, it stretched from Greece all the way over into England, and then I believe it was a company in England that actually they were considering it to be the first, how do I want to say it, commercial barley wine. Anybody else have any other knowledge of the history?
Well, from the back of my bottle here, it says barley wine ale is a classic English-style hearty ale. The term refers to a beer with wine-like qualities that is often vintage dated. Unfortunately, our group historian is not here today.
Right. I mean, John tends to have a big, wide variety of knowledge, him and Red both, especially where they've come from. Um, I've only read and have gone through certain articles that, this person claims that they were the first, this person claimed that they were the first. To be honest with you, I don't care who honestly was the first. I just care, that it is good.
Well, it's an interesting style. There really isn't any rules on it as far as other styles that have to maintain a certain profile. Originally, it was just a high ABV beer. Of course, that's been blown out of the water with now we have imperial IPAs and extremely big imperial stouts. But traditionally, it was just a very strong ale.
Right. And as for the differences between the English barley wines and the American barley wines, I tend to feel that the English is more maltier or on the heavier maltier side, where the American versions is like the overhopped, dry hopped, and overly hopped versions. I mean, it's similar. Like if you look at a barley wine in general, it's malty. You get big caramel notes. You get most of the time, if it's not overly hopped, you should get like big bready notes, biscuity notes. It almost reminds me of an aged like stock ale, an aged version of like a Doppelbock almost, because they have similar qualities to them.
Right.
Well, the Schlafly here is obviously, I mean, it is certainly an American craft, not a traditional English. It's 10-2-40. It is, this particular barley wine is all about the malt.
Well, go ahead, Dale. Tell us what you're getting out of yours.
Yeah. So, well, just based on what I'm drinking, this Lionheart it's actually described as, from the brewery, they say that it's a blend of the English and American styles. So I do get a little bit of the hops, but like this one being the biggest of the group at 13%, it's definitely in that big beer mode. And just like Tom said, there's no style guidelines, because my first introduction to barley wines is actually what you're drinking, Scott, and I had passed over barley wines for years and years and years, and then I started researching and read a little bit about Hog Heaven and found out, now by technical standards, that might actually be more considered a double IPA, but by today's standards. But back when it came out in the 90s, there wasn't really that term of a double IPA. So so this one that I'm getting a lot of apples along with the malty notes and the bread and the big but there's a lot of heat in this thing too at 13%. You're gonna warm the soul.
Can you feel the alcohol presence?
Yes. So it's a nice sipper on a cold day or something. It's gonna keep you warm. So.
Hey, Dale, let me ask you a question. Thanks to you, I was able to try the Lawyer's Guns and Money barley wine.
Right.
Now, I made a comment when I first tried that a few years ago, I mean, well, even now, I suppose, the way that beer presents itself, it could be called a double IPA.
Very easily, and that one, especially when it's fresh in the cans.
Yeah, and I was able to have it on tap at a Flying Saucer in Little Rock, and man, wow! I mean, it does. I mean, if I didn't know that it said barley wine, I would have made the leap that it was a double IPA or an imperial IPA.
Right. I kept a can from that first batch because I think when I sent that to you, that was the very first batch of the cans, and I kept one for a while, and 6 months later, some of that big hop presence was gone, but it was still and so then it was definitely more into that. What you more think about in a barley wine.
Yeah, that one really knocked my socks off. I mean, this one here that I'm drinking, it's all about the malt. It's big, it's toasted caramel. I'm getting a touch of anise, but it is aged on oak, so all around that you feel the oak. but there's not a whole lot of hop presence. This really is more of a traditional English barley wine. It's all about the malt, and it's about that oak. Hey, Tony, we don't mean to be leaving you out. Why don't you tell us what you're drinking?
Mine's an American barley wine. It's got a nice malty taste to it. It's pretty heavy bourbon taste. It's aged in oak bourbon barrels.
Oh, nice. That's always good.
Yeah, pretty strong. Doesn't really smell like bourbon at all, but it's definitely got that taste to it. It's got kind of a, kind of like the plum, sort of like a plum flavor to it. Not really any hops at all in it. It's good.
Very nice.
Yeah, everything for the standards that I was reading on, it was just like most barley wines, especially the English style, really didn't have that big of an aroma, that big of a presence to it, but except for in the flavor itself, where you would drink it and you would be like, wow. That's why they kind of like said that it was like the wine of the beer of wine. So that's where kind of like it got its name from, per se, because of the fact they wanted to amp it up to wine, but yet still consider it a beer.
Right.
And what we do here in America, in my opinion, is just amazing, because I mean, we've got some of the most different barley wines out there on the market, and I would assume there's just like phenomenally more. But mine, per se, is just, you get that barley, you get that malt characteristic, but you definitely do get the hops. And it's just like like you guys said, it could almost be borderline like double IPA, where you can consider it almost like an aged double IPA.
Right.
And it's like there is no guidelines. There is no style guidelines to what you could say is a barley wine. I mean, to me, the BJCP could sit there and write down, okay, this is a barley wine. But it's like, really? But yet, if you look at what history has done to these beers across the board, it's like, your style guidelines are a little out of date compared to the region and what they do with their beers.
Right.
Well, I'm looking at what everybody's drinking. It looks like all of our beers are pretty close to the same color.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something that I
So I've got a nice copper. Mine's a little cloudy. Dale seems to be clearer than mine. And Tony, I mean, yeah. They're all dark.
Definitely. I was going to drink the I guess it's the one of the more famous barley wines, the Bigfoot from Sierra Nevada.
Nice.
2015. And it chimes in at 9.6%, I think, is right where it's at. And but it's always a very good one. But again, I think it gets a little. It's definitely an American barley wine style, because you get that more hops presence. And I think that's just that clear-cut difference between the traditional English style versus the American style is the hop presence, which isn't a bad thing, because I think we just love our hops.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I've said this for years. I think that's the great thing about the American craft beer industry. And I'm not certainly knocking other countries and the great beer they're doing. Most of them tend to stay with tradition. America seems to borrow everybody's tradition, throw it in a pot, and then we keep improving or expanding on it. And that's kind of what we have. The craft beer industry is as big as it is because Americans have said we're going to create our own styles. I think breweries like Stone, for instance, Lagunitas, those two breweries have just invented styles that weren't around before.
Right. That's for sure.
And you have done a lot of beers that are hybrids of styles. Like the hairy eyeball, for instance. I mean, you could probably, it's not a barley wine, but you could probably call it a barley wine if you wanted to.
Right.
Well, I mean, talking on, hybrids of styles, I mean, who ever heard in traditional styles of a blonde stout? I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I gotta admit, that one bothers me. It really screws with my OCD.
Well, that's just like the black and white IPAs. I mean,
Yeah.
it almost don't fit in a style guideline. That's therefore you got to branch out. You know what we do here in America. We like you said, we tend to take what they have and we make alterations to them, where we find, hey, well, this could be this or this could be that, and it might improve it. It might make it worse, or it might just be like blow it out the water, and it's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of any kind of IPA, red, black, or otherwise. I do wish they would just take the blacks and just call them India Darks or Hoppy Blacks, or the same thing with the reds. Call it a Hoppy Red Ale.
Right.
Spring Brewing Company here in town has a beer called Hop Lobster. They don't call it a red IPA. They call it a Hoppy Red Ale. I just wish they would do that. Everything that's hoppy doesn't have to be called an IPA.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I got to as speaking into that IPA thing and this barley wine connection, we've had the new rash hit in the marketplace, the triple IPA, and really, I mean, the only, I guess,
it's a barley wine, right?
As soon as you age it more than 4 months, it's a barley wine.
Right.
So
Barley wine, yeah.
So
they're very hoppy barley wines, but there's a fine line.
Right.
I mean, with Tony out there, do you guys have anything that's like what we're talking about out here? I mean, anything that, like these double IPAs or triple IPAs or anything that's coming from your neck of the woods that could be even aged and considered to be a barley wine?
We've got doubles and we've got the blacks and the reds. I haven't seen any triples yet, but I'd definitely pick one up if I found it.
I mean, I think like Founder's Devil Dancer. That's a barley wine.
Yeah, it's a fine beer, yeah, but it's a barley wine, absolutely. I won't disagree. And what was the other? There's another one I'm trying to remember. Thomas Creek, I believe. Have you had that one? Now it's a great beer. It's nuanced. There's a lot of flavors, but it's a barley wine.
Yeah. Now the one that I think I sent you a can of the Renegade E3 triple IPA. And that thing's a little more towards a double IPA, and because even the color is more in the lighter phase versus the Devil Dancer, which their stats are about the same. But
that was 11%, if I remember correctly.
Yes, you are correct. Yep. Memory's still there, Tom.
I like that one. I like that one a lot, actually.
Yeah. So. But yeah, they're just as a style. Now that I got into them, like I said, Hog Heaven got me to go back and reinvestigate the style, and then I'd start picking them up from here and there. One of my favorites is the Hammerhead from the Barrel Roll series out of Hangar 24 in Redlands, California. That thing is amazing, and it's obviously totally big barrel aged bourbon barrels, I think. So a lot like what Tony's probably drinking, and that one just blows me away. But again, they're just nice. It's a nice sipping beer. You're not going to sit here and pound these, and
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's about weather. When it gets cold in the fall and winter, a barley wine sounds good. It feels good when it's cold outside. You light up the fireplace, and then you can just sip that beer. I think a lot of folks don't understand the larger beers, don't understand that you drink it differently. And,
Right.
and I've even given beers like this to wine drinkers. They approach it like you're drinking a wine. Forget it's this beer on the bottle.
Right.
And then I convert some wine drinkers into craft beer drinkers by doing that.
Oh, exactly.
And with something like this, in my opinion, this is like, it's good. It's really good. I like it. As for what it is, I would seriously almost consider this like an aged double IPA compared to some of the, traditional styles that I've had. I mean, two of the most whacked out traditional styles that I've actually had was Clown Shoes Crunkle Sam. That was like you're more along the lines of your more maltier style barley wine, but again, it's still the amped up high ABV. And then I had their, I believe it was their 4th year, celebration beer, because they brew just like everybody else a beer for the start of the company. Well, their 4th year was called Billionaire. It was an English style barley wine ale, but it was aged in cognac barrels.
Wow.
And that was ungodly amazing. I just fell in love with it and wish I could gone back and got more bottles, but when I went back, they were all gone.
Yeah.
I think that has to do with barrel aging nowadays, because anybody that sees anything that's barrel aged, they just scoff it up.
Yeah.
And I gotta admit, I love the trend. I mean, I love anything barrel aged.
Right.
I actually picked this beer up because I was in at the grocery store. I saw a guy pick up a whole case of these. I was like, well, it must be good. I went over and grabbed a 4-pack of it. It was like $16 for a 4-pack of these.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
I think he bought like 24 bottles of it in a big box. Figure it must be good. Should grab some.
So was it worth the purchase, Tony?
Oh, it's amazing. I wish I had some more of them. I might go back and see if they have any more of them.
See?
This one's a 2015. I've heard people aging these and they say they get better.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a style of beer that you can age for several years. I mean, you know, the Bigfoot Sierra Nevadas, I mean, you know, 4 or 5 years easy. You can hang on to those. That's why they put a big old date right on the bottle, you know. So
Yeah, you treat it just like a wine.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't see no problem with taking any barley wine, because the alcohol percentage in the
Same
beer.
thing, by the way. They stamped 2013 on it, and it even says here on the bottle, 2013 vintage will continue to age well in a cool, dark place for several years, but it's ready to enjoy now.
Right. Which is nice that, you know, you can grab it and it's already going to have the great flavor, but then, you know, if you buy a few and let one sit, you can compare it a year from now, or buy a fresh one the next year, and you do it side by side, you know, and see what the difference is, you know.
Yep, I agree.
With this hog heaven, because I could just see the hops diminishing a little bit, but it turning itself more into along the lines of an English style after the hops diminish, like in about 2-3 years.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, I mean, this is one of my favorite styles because of the fact that I like to see, you know, generally what brewers can do with it, because every single person and every single brewer tends to do them a lot different.
Right. I agree.
Wow, I was hoping John was going to chime in before. What's that?
Anybody have any final thoughts? Final thoughts about the style or their beer they're drinking?
That's what I was just getting ready to say, because I was hoping that
Sorry, man.
our great fearless leader would actually be able to chime in from his location. He said that there was a few things that he might be able to have on tap while he was sitting there. But, I don't think that we can carry on much longer, because it's just like, it's the four of us. We have these great, wonderful beers. We've talked about style guidelines. We've talked about the beers that we have ourselves. And I do wish that we could have Tony back again, you know, in the near future.
I think in a couple of weeks we're doing stouts. Is that correct still?
I've heard the discussion on stouts, and I've heard the discussion on Doppelbocks.
Yeah, one of those two, but probably stouts. Get the stouts out, and then
I'm angling for stouts. Yeah, I'm hoping for stouts.
All right,
So there's another vote for stouts from Tony.
Yeah.
There we go. It's an almost unanimous vote, pretty much, because of the fact that I voted for my stout as well, because I even picked up mine today.
Man, you keep bringing all these Colorado beers, Scott.
I know, man.
I haven't even had that one yet. That's 72 Imperial. So
I've had the traditional and regular 72, but I have not had the barrel age. So I thought I'd pick it up and give it a try.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, my final thoughts is, you know, it's just it definitely is. If you've never had one, you know, I don't know that you can go wrong by picking any one of them off the shelf. You know, just grab it. You know, the biggest thing is probably, temperature when you first want to take that first sip. You don't want to be at 40 degrees right out of your cooler or whatever, and you want to, probably closer to 50,
My bottle says 50 to 55 right on it.
Exactly. So, and that's as far as somebody investigating the style, but again, it has similarities compared to a stout. It has similarities compared to the double IPAs and.
Yeah, I mean, you basically want to treat it like a red wine. Serve it at about the same temp you'd serve a red wine.
Right. And eat a big burger or a steak with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am a fan of the style because there isn't a guideline. Because you can buy anybody's barley wine and they're going to be vastly different. It doesn't, the malts used, the hops used, it can be anything. It's just a great big beer. But for me, again, it's about the weather. During the fall and winter, it feels comfortable. I'm not going to buy a barley wine in August. But for the time, I mean, yeah, this is a beer that really fits right now.
Yep.
Well, with that said, I think we're going to wrap it up. Let's have a few words from our guest and what he thinks. And we'll shove it off from there. Go ahead with your final thoughts, Tony.
Might actually be my first barley wine I've had. I'm not really sure, but it's good stuff. I would highly recommend them. I would recommend the Central Waters aged. This one that I'm drinking, if you can get it where you're at. It's from Wisconsin. I can get it here in Iowa. So I've started drinking more barley wines. They're pretty good.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Tony.
Yep,
yeah, thank you very much. Well, if anybody's got anything else, if not, we'll see everybody again for our stout tasting, evidently.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Peace.